are these people?
There's a lot of things happening in the Assange extradition case. He's on his last leg. Like you can't get any farther than this. Like once he sends this appeal, I think his lawyers can send maybe one. We'll get into it, but he can send one more appeal. But after that, I'm not sure. After that, it's gonna take public pressure. I mean, so in traditional tone deaf American fashion, we have Secretary Blinken just on September 15th, 2 days ago.
Oh my God.
3 days ago, where democracy depends on the free and open exchange of ideas, including online. On this International Day of Democracy, which I didn't even know.
It's a made-up day.
Just a fucking made-up day to like promote this word that like basically doesn't exist. Okay, but like I call on governments around the world to protect citizens' access to information that allows them to make informed decisions. So sounds great. You know, everyone called out this guy appropriately.
I see Fisher right there. Yeah, he's like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah, no, it's completely cynical, tone deaf, and absolutely ridiculous. So here's an article. You might have saw this coming up from a couple other outlets.
This is just insane. This is just insane.
This is, yeah. So Craig Murray, the former British ambassador and close associate of imprisoned WikiLeaks.
Make it a little bigger. Sorry, just
yeah, I got you. Said he was prevented by a U.S. Marshal from entering the courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia, where Assange would be put on trial if he loses his extradition case in Britain. Sounds pretty close to Langley. So in Washington, it's also Washington, but like in Washington on a U.S. tour, Murray told a gathering on a Wednesday that with some time to kill, he decided earlier that day to visit the federal courthouse in Alexandria just to see what it was like. So I found the federal court and I went to enter, as any member of the public is entitled to do. Murray said, according to a video recording of his remarks, they asked me for ID, as they ask everybody, I believe, and I handed my passport. They made a phone call. Somebody came down, and he had a badge that said U.S. Marshals. Murray said, sorry, sir, but you can't enter the courtroom. There's no reason why he would not.
Anybody can go to. You could go to court. Everybody knows you can just like walk into courtrooms and if you wanted to spend all day sitting in a courtroom just looking at people pleading their cases and whatever, you're allowed to do that.
You sit in court to watch other people's get slammed on their traffic tickets.
Yeah,
all the time. This is not like it's a public. This is a public courtroom. He says it right here. Is this not a public courtroom? Is there not public right of access? And he recognizes, yes, sir, but you're not the public. And I said, but there's trials, and trials by law are open to the public generally. And he said, yeah, but you can't come in, Ambassador Murray. He said, it's really interesting because nowhere in my passport does it give my title, nor had I mentioned it. So how do they know who I am? Must have a blacklist or something. There's a level of surveillance, Murray went on. Remember I know Indy covered a story about how they were recording, they were taping Assange. And the level of surveillance, Murray went on. I don't know if that is facial recognition technology. I don't know what it is that brought that up. I don't know whether they had a memo sitting on a desk, but it's got to be something saying that says, if Craig Murray comes, don't let him in. And what does this mean for the open access of Julian here? There's a lot of different accounts on this, but it's that this is an insane account of what's going on. So it's now a completely quiet. There's no talking about this.
So ostensibly what's going to happen is they're going to claim that it's going to be a public trial and extradition, but yet MSM wants to bury it and wants to pretend that Julian Assange doesn't exist, and they would be the only ones who would be invited to this courtroom, so they're not going to go. And ostensibly they're going to kit nobody with any sort of diplomatic privilege is going to be allowed to be there. So this
and like that's actually he has Craig Murray has
right,
diplomatic.
and that's the thing is like
he's a fucking former British ambassador, and like Craig Murray actually does really great work because the only reason why we know a lot about like a lot of these court cases is because Craig Murray is a human rights advocate and he attends the trials.
Right.
So this is Craig Murray on the Chris Hedges report. He was explaining this a little bit more. Well, he was more so explaining the case a little bit more, but just to show you, like, it's just he's just describing a little bit more further details from about 3 days ago about the current case on Assange.
Security services were his favorite clients because they are, organized and brilliant and cogent, and he's entirely a tool of the security services, and that's why he was given this particular job. So there's a right of appeal normally.
Let me just interrupt because it's a little different from the American system. And I have tried to get my head around the UK legal system. It's an appeal to a two-judge panel, a bit like our appellate court. And essentially, the appeal states that there wasn't sufficient grounds for the judge to make this ruling. Is that correct, basically?
That's right. There's now, if you like, you were already at an appeal stage, and now you're an appeal to the High Court. Now you're making an appeal to the appeal court, which is actually the same court. It's physically the same place, and it's the same panel of judges.
It's all the same people. It's all the same.
So they're just going to be like, no, again, get the fuck out of here.
That's exactly what it is. So you tell me, does this sound like a
this is kangaroo court shit?
Would any lawyer in the world, would any judge in the world look at this case and like any normal judge look at this case and like say that this is normal? Oh yeah, like, that's fine. Like, listen, this is this is really the last leg.
Yeah, he's about to get extradited
to Judge Swift, and the appeal now is to a two-judge panel, and it's saying that it's an appeal for a right to further make the appeal. It's not an appeal for the entire judgment to be overturned. And Judge Swift, in his judgment, dismissing with contempt the entire case and not bothering really to answer any of the arguments, he said that this appeal has to be limited to 20 pages of A4, and that it will be timetabled as a 30-minute appeal.
No, it's exactly like you said. It's all bureaucratic. This is exactly like how they how they rush defense bills in Congress, like last minute.
Like in like the middle of the night, like freaking just trying to shuffle things through. Like
that's how a lot of this
works.
30
minutes. It's not 30 minutes for the defense. That's 30 minutes for the entire hearing. So plainly, that's a kind of summary process to just try and close off the final avenue of appeal. And this is all quite extraordinary. There's almost no pretense of due process involved here, but that's been true.
Nothing.
Throughout the proceedings. One of the things I witnessed during the initial extradition hearings was that when procedural motions were made, for example, on whether certain evidence was admissible, the defense would stand up and argue why the evidence should be admissible, and then the prosecution would stand up and argue why the evidence should not be admissible. And then the judge would give her ruling. But the judge came into court, and the public gallery is seated above the judge. You're higher than the judge, so you can look down on the judge. And I saw 100% for certain the judge came into court with her ruling already typed out before she heard the arguments.
It was probably typed up by a U.S. fucking
It was probably a U.S. Marshal just typing in like, "This is what you're going to say."
No.
This exactly. This is run by the MIC. The whole court. The whole court is run by the MIC. Listen to this again. This is crazy.
Things I witnessed during the initial extradition hearings was that when procedural motions were made, for example, on whether certain evidence was admissible, the defense would stand up and argue why the evidence should be admissible, and then the prosecution would stand up and argue why the evidence should not be admissible. And then the judge would give her ruling. But the judge came into court, and the public gallery is seated above the judge. You're higher than the judge, so you can look down on the judge. And I saw 100% for certain. The judge came into court with her ruling already typed out before she heard the arguments. And she sat there almost pretending to listen to what the defense was saying for an hour and what the prosecution was saying for an hour. Then she simply read out the ruling.
She's like the Queen of Hearts.
It was
in Alice in Wonderland, you know, giving the verdict before she hears the sentence.
Precisely that. But exactly, it's much more convenient. And my own strong suspicion is it's not the judge who wrote that ruling.
Right.
Yeah, you think?
That's exactly what we said.
That's what she was given. As this is what we want as a ruling on.
Yeah, and just before we go on, I mean, you and I have you've covered it more extensively than I have, but I've covered it and have been in London for some of the hearings. On the most basic level, the evisceration of attorney-client privilege, because UC Global recorded the meetings between Julian and his lawyers, that in a UK court, as in a US court, alone should get the trial invalidated.
Right.
Yeah, in any democracy.
Right. That should have put an end to it right there. Oh, we were spying on you while you were living at the embassy. Like, that should have been like...
Any lawyer in the world,
if your intelligence services have been recording the client's attorney consultations, that would get the case thrown out.
100%. I remember that.
Any fucking lawyer in the world, ask any lawyer and any judge about this case, about attorney-client privilege. Some of the most corrupt countries in the world have attorney-client privilege.
Yeah, it's kind of like the
it's like one of the most basic things you can offer to, like, you know, like for an actually fair trial. And he's not getting that. So this is very obviously no signs of any sort of
kangaroo court shit. This is just completely.
We know that the witness that they bought off, because the key witness admits to not only does the FBI admit
guy, I remember this.
Yeah, they admit to lies in the indictment, but also the key witness that they have is turns out to be a huge pedo. So
they picked the best people,
and it's ridiculous because they paid everything. They paid for the evidence, they paid for the guy, and it's all set up. It's all perfectly set up for the MIC. How strange is that? It's funny.
It's just that like Julian Assange didn't stand a chance, and it's really sad to see. It'll be really. We got a lot of work to do when he gets extradited to the States, when that date gets set, because indie media is really going to have to freaking coalesce around Assange when he gets extradited. It's going to be really...
he's going to... That's exactly what I'm about to bring up right now.
Okay, cool.
He talks about this is like when we say this is Julian's last leg, this is literally Julian.
Yeah, he's about to be extradited.
He's gonna get extradited, and we need to be sounding the alarms. We've seen
we've been covering Lahaina, and we got a little bit more to do on Lahaina tonight. But when Assange gets extradited, or when it's known that he's going to be extradited to the States, you can guarantee that we're gonna have something to say about it on every single one of our shows.
Yeah,
and probably among most people on in are going to have something to say about it. I hope that's one thing that we can all agree on.
And you know what? That's going to be when you see all the phonies come out, when they're not talking
all the bad faith people talking about the freaking allegations and shit.
Democratic anymore, like the late Roman Republic.
Oh, but he's a rapist.
I want to talk about, so once this 2-panel hearing is over, and I think it's a pretty safe assumption that they will reject the appeal. What happens then?
Safe assumption.
The immediate thing that will happen is that Julian's lawyers will try to go to the European Court in Strasbourg to
European Court of Human Rights.
European Court of Human Rights to submit an appeal and get the extradition stopped pending an appeal. The worry is that Julian would instantly be extradited. That the government wouldn't wait to hear from the European Court.
Explain to Americans what it is and what jurisdiction it has in the UK, the European Court.
Yeah. The European Court of Human Rights is not a European Union body. It's a body of the Council of Europe. And it has...
citizens.
Has jurisdiction over the European Convention of Human Rights, which guarantees basic human rights. And therefore it has legally binding jurisdiction over human rights violations in any member state of the treaty. So it does have a legally binding jurisdiction and is acknowledged as such normally by the UK government. They're very powerful voices within the current Conservative government in the UK, which wants to exit the
of course they do.
Convention on Human Rights.
Of course they do.
But at present, that's not the case. The UK is still part of this system, and so the European Court of Human Rights has legally binding authority over the government of the United Kingdom, purely on matters that contravene human rights.
And if they do extradite him, I mean, they've essentially nullified that process. I mean, the fear is that, of course, the security services would know about the ruling in advance. He'd be on the tarmac and shuttled, sedated and put in a diaper and hooded or something and put out a CIA flight to Washington. I want to talk about if that happens. I think it's certainly very possible. What we need to do here, and I know part of the reason you're in the United States is to prepare for that should it take place. I think you will try and cover the hearings trial here as you did in the UK. But let's talk about where we go if that event occurs.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing to say is that if that happens, on the day it happens, it will be the biggest news story in the world. It will be a massive news story.
100%.
So we have to be prepared. We have to know who from the Assange movement or who from his defense team, who's going to be the spokesman, who are going to be the spokespeople, who are going to be offered up to all the major news agencies, because we have to affect the story on day one. Because if you get behind the story, and we know what their line will be, they'll put out all these lies about people being killed because of WikiLeaks, about American security being endangered. We know all the propaganda that they will try to flood the airwaves with. So we need to be ready and ahead of the game to know who our people are, who are going to be offered up to interview, who are going to proactively get onto the media, and not just the alternative media like this media, but onto the mainstream media as well, so-called mainstream, and get out the story. So those things have to be taken. And then there are all the practical things. There are many on Julian's family, which will need to come over to support him. We'll need to know immediately how to get them, where to get them to, what their accommodation is going to be. We need activists on that day to be ready to go out and start demonstrating all over the United States. And one thing that I really believe, I've been very, on this tour I'm on in the States at the moment, I've been meeting activists, and there's a huge base of very experienced and extremely impressive activists who are interested in the Assange case. But there's no real spark to it yet. I think the day he arrives, and you will have the Deadwood press, like the Washington Post and the New York Times, will be running editorials saying this shouldn't be happening. So there will be much more public awareness of what's happening and what's behind it. And I think that day there are a lot of people ready to jump into action. Well, they have to know what to do. No, we have to know in each city and town in the United States where there's going to be a demonstration the day he arrives, where people should go, what time they should get there. We need to start preparing that kind of base level of activism.
I visited Julian with. He's got a good point. It's just what's the time like? I'm assuming you watched the whole interview. Did Murray allude to any sort of timeline?
No, it's really up to the, like, they can keep pushing this back as long as they can. Like, this is why it's the slow execution.
Because they want him to die in a cell instead of having a freaking huge case.
They don't want this to happen. They would rather him die in a cell. You're correct. Yes.
Yeah.
They would much rather he die in a cell because they don't want the pushback from this. I maybe push, but maybe let me just play. I'll just play with me the last minute of this. He asked him about Michael Radner.
My friend Michael Radner, who was Julian's lawyer since we've lost Michael a couple of years ago. But I remember, a great civil rights attorney, founded the Center for Constitutional Rights. But I remember Michael telling me that in order to prosecute these cases, and he got legal representation, for instance, for the prisoners in Guantanamo, you need people in the streets, that it's extremely important. And he's talking about his work in the courtroom, that there are people outside the courtroom, and you may have been in the courtroom when I was in London with Baritza complaining at one point, the judge, about the noise outside the courtroom.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. We're going to need to have people at the actual court itself. And of course, we don't know exactly. There'll be all kinds of procedural steps of Julian being produced and not produced, and all kinds of motions filed and things before the court itself gets the trial proper gets going. But at each stage, it's very important to have people available and at the courtroom and able to go outside.
How old is Julian Assange now? 50s, 60s?
No matter what, I mean, he is old.
No, but I mean, like, is he old enough where, like,
he's not just mentally debilitated, he's physically not well.
I know.
Craig Murray himself, he spent a couple of months in solitary confinement. He knows.
Shit.
Yeah.
I mean, he definitely has a really good point that, knock on glass saves your ass. Assange gets extradited and he's still alive, that there is like a huge public outcry. And like
there has to
be. Like you said, that's like the biggest thing that the American government fears, is that like people are going to be outraged across the world. And like, let's remember who like what's Assange's country of origin?
Well, public pressure works. We've seen this in other court cases before.
Yeah, that's true. It's completely unprecedented that a man from Australia can be extradited to be tried for an American crime.
Oh no, it's absolutely ridiculous. Completely 100% ridiculous, ludicrous, doesn't make any sense. So.
It's a really scary time, man. Like, I would freaking it's at the very least, it's good to hear somebody like Murray saying like we need to be able to be mobilized and start speaking and protesting and being on the streets and rallying behind Assange like before day one. Like the minute we know what's going on, we need to know how to mobilize and how to freaking round up the troops and get people active about this. This, like, if Assange makes it to the States, it's going to be something that we're going to remember for the rest of our lives. It's something that people are going to tell their kids about. It's going to be.
I'll remember this for the rest of my life. It's 100% impactful. This is a history unfolding, because it is 100% completely unprecedented.
Yeah, it's just. It's going to be fucking. It's going to be fucking.
Because you can't just grab people from other countries and then just claim them as yours. Like this is the U.S. operating on some different level of corruption.
How many years has it been since Assange got put in? What was it? It was what embassy was it? Venezuela? What embassy did he spend years in? I forget. But like, how many years has all that Assange stuff been taking place? Like, freaking, has it been over 10 years yet?
Yeah. But no, maybe like 8
years, 8 or something. Yeah. So like, it's been in our consciousness for quite a long time. So the 52 years old man, he looks way older than that. It's so unfortunate. Ecuador embassy, yes, correct. Desert Mendes, yes, it's Ecuador. That was the embassy that he was at.
Yeah, sorry, it's getting late over here. We're roughing this one. We're gonna touch on the last story real quick, but before I do want to shout out Misty's thing because this is something that people can do. Is that they can go and call their
good shout out
the Capitol, the Justice Department. Guess who made this graphic? It may or may not be your favorite indie crab. This is important. Free Julian Assange, and Indian News Network is all for the fight.
That's just going to get blown.
When he and you know just know that when God willing when it does happen, we're ready at the gates. We're ready at the gates for when.
Well, yeah,
when
like,
happens.
and we're
hoping it doesn't. We're hoping it doesn't, but
I mean, I just hope that every other indie station has that commitment, whether they voiced it out yet or not, like already knows that if Assange gets extradited, everybody's fucking covering that shit. I can't imagine any. Can you imagine like the Vanguard being on the opposite side of Assange? What that's gonna fucking look like?
Oh, they might. They'll find some. I mean, the TYT did it.
So yeah, like we're gonna see. Oh my god, people are going to show their true colors when Assange gets extradited.
That's going to be the awakening.
The most disgusting people are going to say the most disgusting things about one of the greatest journalists to ever fucking live if he gets extradited to the U.S. Oh, it's so sad, man. It's just it's such a sad story, and like
absolutely criminal. Absolutely criminal.